Hello, I'm William Gallagher and this is Jane Austen Week on 58 Keys. Specifically today, the 58 Keys Script Club. It's a book club. You know how those work, but it's for scripts. You could listen to me enthuse, or you could just go read the script, couldn't you? Link in the description. But one thing about that, I'm only ever going to talk here about scripts that you can get, because what's the point otherwise? And most often that means PDF ones that have been released online or that you can buy in things like Blu-ray sets. Those are usually the best because they are as written by the writer, possibly edited a bit, but there you go, and as used by the cast and crew. As it happens, most of the time they're free too, which is staggering, actually. And I'm secretly convinced it's why the entire internet was. I might be biased, and I may also be impoverished. Actually, I can't say that to you and then not also point out that I spent hundreds of pounds buying some PDF scripts online and things. So just be aware, this is a dangerous rabbit hole that you're pursuing here, but such a great one. Anyway, so normally write PDFs online stuff. I would ordinarily say that the published script in a script book is like a second best choice. It's a choice if there is no, I mean, it's great. Script books are fantastic. That they exist at all is great, but scripts in books are always edited. Often quite a lot. They might leave out scenes that didn't happen to make the final cut of whatever the script, whatever the show is, but they're also always squashed up to fit onto as few pages as possible. And sometimes they're really just transcripts rather than what the writer, fine balance today. But this time, you and I are talking about Emma Thompson's dramatisation of Jane Austen's Sense and Sensibility. And while there is an online PDF copy that I will link to, I'd like to urge you to buy the book. For alongside, I mean, I think this is a truly exceptional screenplay. Most editions contain Emma Thompson's diaries from the making of the film, plus an introduction by producer Lindsay Doran. I'm reasonably sure I'm pronouncing that correctly. And Doran, that producer's intro is so interesting. I mean, one of them, okay, let's say, producer or writer, one of them, let's say, makes a very good case for comparing Jane Austen to Monty Python. Read the book to find out which. I have a sudden thought it might be both. One of them talks about the magic roundabout. But now, speaking of reading the book, in order to examine and enthuse about Emma Thompson's screenplay, I'm rather going to have to spoil it, and therefore also spoil Jane Austen's novel. I offer that you've had 30 years to read the screenplay and 214 years to read the novel, and yet still I'm feeling a bit guilty. I'm guilty because once I got a really angry letter sent into Radio Times magazine because there was a column I wrote for them that slightly accidentally a bit spoilt the ending of Twin Peaks, and that was merely 20 years after that show aired. Anyway, so you might want to just read the script and come back, but yeah. Further apology would be absurd. Sense and Sensibility, the novel and the film, they're both the story of Eleanor and Marianne Dashwood. Where the hell do you start with this story? Okay, forget the story. Let's try to pick out bits. You know, maybe we should just read the script together. It could be quicker. Pick out the key things, right? Key things you need to know so like, I believe I can usefully enthuse about the script. Hopefully believe I can usefully enthuse. Marianne falls for this guy, Willoughby, and in first spoiler, brace yourself, Willoughby's an arse, really. Not a word Jane Austen used very much. I mean, possibly more in a juvenilia, but you know, I like to be concise and precise. Then Eleanor falls for Edward, but spoiler 2, he is sort of betrothed to Lucy Steele. Also, it's really important to know that this story is another example of how wills and legal practice in Jane Austen's time could mean that a house and estate are entailed to only male relatives. So, as Sense and Sensibility begins, Henry Dashwood is dying. Yeah, if there are lots of names, don't bother with this. He's toast, okay. But before he goes, his estate has to go to his son John, so the guy makes John promise to look after his widow, Mrs. Dashwood, and their daughters, Eleanor, Marianne, and Margaret. But then, in one of my absolute favourite parts of all Jane Austen novels, John decides to provide well for them, but his wife Fanny slowly talks him down into providing for them only quite well, then rather less well, and then just rather less, and so on until he doesn't do anything for them at all. Worse, he and Fanny turn up to take over the family house, for a time reducing that family to being lodgers in their own place. Now, the way I said that, I think it sounds like it's all Fanny's manipulation, and it is, but John is certainly a weak man, vaguely wanting to do good. I mean, you know the type, and is a bit too easily talked into things for my liking. Now, in the novel, right, Jane Austen takes us through this whole sequence really well. I mean, it's very funny, and yet at the same time, it's very sad. And she does so spread over about 2 chapters and takes around 2,500 words or so. Now, I can't stress this adequately enough. That's practically fast paced, and while you're reading it, you're fully conscious throughout just how bad Fanny and John are being. But it is also funny, and in part because of that pace through it, because of each new step in the lessening of what John will do. It's great. 2,500 words or so, absolutely excellent. Emma Thompson pulls off the entire same thing in 300 words. That's 300 words of dialogue. There's the odd sentence of stage description that kind of nudges the plot along a bit, but predominantly it's the dialogue, and so that's what, 300 words, it's 8 times faster than in the novel. Thompson splits this conversation out over very many short scenes interspersed with other things, so she also gives us the sense, all the sense really, of Fanny working on John for a longer period than we physically see. But when I say she pulls off the same thing, I really mean it. There is no sense of it being compressed or rushed or simplified. There's no sense of it being sped up or being too fast for it. The job is to take John from doing the right thing to doing nothing, and the job is to convey the characters of him and Fanny, and both Jane Austen and Emma Thompson do it just precisely. They do exactly that. Both of them. They do exactly that, and they both do it very quickly. But if you're ever having trouble writing concisely, go read Emma Thompson's script. And while you're there, you could also read it for when you're deciding, I mean, higher level discussion here, is a character of yours even necessary at all? I would argue, for instance, that Thompson's script is a faithful dramatisation of Jane Austen's novel, but it isn't remotely, really. It just seems as if it is. I think because it captures the feel of the book. For instance, one diversion, one change, it entirely leaves out a character. It simply omits Lady Middleton, who, even if you read the novel, I don't fully think you would miss the character enough to care whether or not I remind you who she was. And it also leaves out Anne Steele, the sister of Lucy Steele, the one sort of betrothed to Edward. And Lucy Steele is so interesting. Her sort of betrothal is secret, and she confides that secret to Eleanor, who by then we already know, well, how else? Eleanor has the hots for Edward herself. Okay. And there's this really thin line about, can you have a thin line that's tilted at an angle, a tilted line? Because really, it's right on the bubble whether she is genuinely confiding because, as she claims, she wants Eleanor as a friend, or whether she knows Edward fancies Eleanor back, and by God, she's going to get in the way in that. She's not going to let that happen. Except there is that line, but there isn't. There is that bubble, but there isn't, because you bet she wants to keep Edward out of Eleanor's clutches. And yet still, the way it's played and the way it's written, dancing around that line, and it's just fascinating right there on the page. Also actually very funny. At one point, Lucy pretends to cry and dabs at her eye with a handkerchief, making certain that the end of it with Edward's initials are in Eleanor's eyeline. In the novel, though, it's Lucy's sister Anne who blabs about this sort of betrothal. In the film, it's Lucy herself who does, well, she does some more of this confiding lark. It's just this time to very much the wrong person. I don't know what I think about this, because I do think both versions work very well. I'm sure about that part. If I were dramatising this, I don't think I would have even thought to write it differently than the novel. And I know that's a failure of imagination on my part. And actually, I think it's another example of how Thompson was actually quite ruthless in her dramatisation. And yet, like I say, it leaves you convinced it's the most faithful version of the story. Again, because I think she's, like I say, she's captured the feel of the book rather than slavishly copying out pages 17 to 126 or something. In practical terms, Emma Thompson apparently said somewhere that it was the men in the story that were the hardest to write, in part because actually they're quite absent from the novel. Such a lot of the novel doesn't have them in it. She altered Edward most significantly, and I've got to say, I missed this. I totally missed this. But Angela Gallagher, my wife, pointed it out just now. Most significantly, Thompson gives him an extra scene. If you know the film or if you read the script already, it's that scene in the stables where Edward is trying to talk to Eleanor, and we're supposed to think he's trying to propose, but he isn't, and they're interrupted anyway. The implication is, later we realise the implication is he was trying to tell her about this betrothal, and it's little touches like that that arguably make Edward more likeable in the film than in the novel. I mean, I liked him in the novel, but yeah. Similarly, another male character I haven't mentioned yet, Colonel Brandon. I want to say that he's made more sympathetic, but that's not it. That's not right. He gets more to do. He has a line that goes, "Give me an occupation, Miss Dashwood, or I shall run mad," which is all Thompson, and in context and actually with how it's delivered by Alan Rickman is deeply effective. That's character. And so is this, but this is also plot. I mean, character, plot, plot, character. You can only really separate them if you're willing to do intense character studies where nothing happens. Or maybe if you want to do end of the universe type action stuff where you just want all the characters to die to get it over with. In Sense and Sensibility, the novel, a key part of this is the character of Willoughby, who I called an arse, and Jane Austen actually has a go at redeeming his character in a kind of plot twist. Last spoiler. While in both the novel and the screenplay, right, Willoughby heads off, leaves the story. In the novel, he comes back. I should say for completeness that there is a moment in the screenplay where we see him again towards the end. It's just for a few frames and it's not for any dialogue, but the novel has an entire conversation between him and Eleanor towards the end. I suspect that this is one of those writing decisions that seems obvious only after someone has gone and done it. Again, if I would dramatise this novel, I'm certain I would have at least tried to stay true to it, which means I would have included Willoughby's return, but I am equally sure that I would have been wrong to do that. I am certain that Emma Thompson actually made the right choice. This would appear to me, I realise this, saying this to you now, this would appear to me that I think Thompson's version of Sense and Sensibility is better than Jane Austen's, and that's pushing it, isn't it? I mean, maybe in this one respect, this one beat, maybe, but this is all just too simple. The real answer is that both versions are right, both are different, but both are the same. So, I mean, it's an answer, but it's not a terribly helpful one. If only there were rules that we could follow. One more thing, which I don't think is a spoiler, and which is definitely tiny, it's absolutely tiny, but I think about this a lot. Lucy Steele confides in Eleanor, right, and has Eleanor promise to not reveal the secret of this sort of betrothal. Eleanor makes that promise and she keeps her word, even from her sister, even from her family. Now, two sides to this, really. There is the issue that if she told Marianne, it would upset her, and more, Eleanor would be subjected to very loud and protracted sympathy. The family would really be adding to her struggles rather than alleviating them. So there is that, okay, but still, in a modern story, I don't think Eleanor would keep her word, because I don't think that we as an audience would believe that she would. Not this promise, not that secret. Yet this is a key part of the plot, also a key part of Eleanor's character. And I think also that readers in Jane Austen's day would have believed it. It would have seemed normal. We're not in Jane Austen's day, so since, like I say, the plot requires Eleanor not to say anything, she doesn't. And then when it finally comes out, Emma Thompson does this. "I could not break my word," says Eleanor. And the stage direction right after is, "Clearly there is no arguing this point." That's it. That is a direction to Marianne, I think, as much as it is to Eleanor. And it's one case where I think it's a particularly strong cue to the actors. Emma Thompson, I should say, starred as Eleanor as well as writing the script. Really impressive woman. So this was a note to herself. It was a note to Kate Winslet, who was playing Marianne, and to Ang Lee, who was the director of the film. It was a note about playing this specific important beat. Marianne has to accept it totally and instantly, and Eleanor has to mean it totally, or else we don't believe it and things fall apart. Stage directions, okay, they're for the cast and the crew. Screenplays are for the cast and the crew, and they're not actually meant to be read by, with the likes of me just for fun. They are scaffolding or a blueprint for final production. They are, they're a step towards that finished film. But the best screenwriters, they can write scripts that are just a pleasure, just a really good read right there on the page, such as this one. They do all the work that every script must, but they do it in a way that is literate and is entertaining. And I think that's essential. I've read scripts that were just like mechanical blueprints, and actually several times I've been left feeling for the poor cast and crew who had to make that bugger work somehow. Yeah. Unfortunately, much more often I've read scripts like this that actually they really cleverly convey the tone of the final film through how they are written, without ever saying something as overt or as crude as "this bit's funny." They are funny on the page, and funny in a minimalist way, funny in a way that leaves room for actors to do their thing. Listen, that's it for this 58 Keys Script Club, except to say that links for the book and the online version, the PDF version of the script, are in the description. If you go for the online script, though, note that just a couple of times there are some odd formatting problems. I don't really know why, but just once or twice, a stage direction has been kind of pulled up into the previous dialogue. So actually, every now and again, it reads as if a character suddenly and quite disturbingly gone into a third person. "Johnny no mean to hurt kitten." Where did that come from? And this is also actually the end of the 58 Keys Jane Austen week, and I had such a great time doing this. Talking to you, thinking about Jane Austen's writing, contorting the usual 58 Keys format to include news of her favourite Apple Pencil. Yeah, no, best not to ask. Best to follow the links to that one in the description and the lessons I learned from Jane Austen writing as well. But while there's no question that I would be rereading Jane Austen someday, because I do every now and again, there is also no question that the topic could ever have occurred to me for 58 Keys if it weren't for Katie Lumsden and her Books and Things channel on YouTube. She's in the middle right now, as this goes out, she's in the middle of Jane Austen July, which she does every year, and it has group read-alongs, has discussions, and it always has news of Jane Austen related books, from non-fiction to the quite startling number of novels that orbit the originals, that expand on the characters or the plots in ways that, I still need to be convinced aren't just fan fiction. You can work on me on that one. But thank you to Katie Lumsden for inspiring me, and actually so many others on YouTube. And thanks too for you for watching. But take care of yourself, eh? Read more, definitely, as long as you also write more. It is important. And I'll see you soon.